article to write a nice research story. This is the outline of the presentation. First, very quickly, why do we publish? How I see the current and future landscape when it comes to publication. I won't cover everything because again, there are many things going on at the moment. Then I'm going to define what top quality articles mean, at least in the UK, and that's basically on REF, what we call the Research Excellence Framework. And then we're going to spend most of our time between these 2 points: how to write high quality articles, basically some ideas, some advice, and then why do we, or in the particular case of the journals I work for, why do I accept your article? And then some final thoughts, and then we have time for Q&As at the end. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will understand what makes a good article according to international editors and reviewers. And hopefully you will learn a few tricks and advice to make your manuscript or your article. I will use the word manuscript mainly, how to make your manuscript more publishable. So why do we publish? Well, there are many reasons. First of all, because most of us in this call, we probably have a PhD. So we did our PhD, we have to publish, yeah? We want to solve interesting problems, many times as part of the PhD, and we want to show the world how we solved that particular problem. For those of us in probation who have recently joined a university, we want to prove ourselves. We want to also get more funding. We want to improve our CVs. So these are also reasons. We also publish because many people do it. There is this policy of publish or perish. But the reality is that we as editors and reviewers, when we get your manuscripts, we tend to ignore these reasons. Yeah, I don't want to say we don't care, but the reality is that we don't really think about any of these points when we get manuscripts. How things look like and the way I personally see it, particularly in Thailand. In general, Thai research has a reasonably to good quality, but many times what I can see is limited impact. I think many times Thai researchers tend to focus more on the amount of articles, of manuscripts, and much less on the quality of the articles. And I think that's a trend I've seen over the years. Every time I get more and more involved in Thai research. You have very good collaboration internally, and I've seen a number of articles between many of your colleagues, but there is less international collaboration. So in that sense, there is also room for opportunity there. Many times there is also limited collaboration with industry, NGOs, and so on. But I have to say this is not only in Thailand, this is in general in all countries. However, things are getting better. Thailand and general Southeast Asia, it's open now for more international collaboration. Specifically talking about civil engineering, sorry about those who are not engineers, but coming from a civil engineering background myself, I have a conscious bias towards that subject. In terms of civil engineering, Thai researchers publish very few articles in the top high-ranked journals. And obviously, most of these articles and manuscripts come from the big universities. Like many of us in this call, probably all of us, we speak language as a second or even third language. So we have issues with English language and the use of English. Obviously, that's not exclusively to Thailand. Even myself, I have issues with English. But there is a reality that in all cases, you Thai researchers need to improve the number and quality of your articles, of your manuscripts. Why? Because the world is getting more competitive, and obviously because you need to maximize the impact of your work. And ultimately, you need to improve because this is aligned with your president's and Walaila's strategy of prioritizing publications in Q1 journals. So you have to do it, I'm afraid. No choice. Peer review is the way we publish, and I think this dominates and will dominate publication in the coming years. That's a reality. Uh, in general, editors and reviewers in journals are assets because we are important. Basically, that's how journals operate. They depend on editors and reviewers. But in the process from submission to publication, we are usually the ones who suffer the most. So even when you think as an author that you are suffering because of our comments and the reviews we give you, major revisions or minor revisions, we also suffer at the same time with you as an author. Remember that most of the editors and reviewers for the big journals are people like you, researchers, lecturers. Yes, we're usually leaders in an area of research, but we're also very busy people. We have teaching, research, admin, and we are juggling all this with our family life. Yeah, especially if you're like me, that you have two children or three children, you know how life it is. So we are very busy people, but we like to help science and move science forward, and especially we like to keep up to date with other things happening not only in our countries but also abroad, because that's one of the beauties when you are an editor or a reviewer. You get to know what other people are doing around the world. But keep in mind that most editors and reviewers actually work for free. Some of them get paid, uh, but at least I don't get paid. So I'm editor and reviewer. I do it essentially for free. So keep that in mind as well when you submit articles. There is no doubt that English is and will be the universal language of research. And that's the trend we've seen in the last at least 100 years. I think it's going to continue like that at least for another 100 years. Who knows what's going to happen after that? Something else you need to keep in mind, only well-written manuscripts can be properly peer-reviewed. And I know writing a manuscript takes time and effort, but it's actually very good to clarify your own ideas when you're trying to publish something. And if you think about it, your main goal as an author, as a writer of a manuscript, of an article, is to make our life as editors and reviewers as easy as possible. How you do it? By writing manuscripts of high quality, easy to follow, and quick to review. So in this presentation, I'm going to give you a few ideas on how you can go about it, how you can improve your writing. So as I said before, we have to get into the mindset of an editor. As soon as we get a manuscript in the system, we have the window, there is a new article for you assigned. First thing we have to do is to download it and read what the article is about. And we have to decide what we do with that manuscript. First thing I ask myself is, what am I learning from this manuscript? Do I actually need to know what the information in this manuscript? And probably more important, because obviously I have bias towards civil engineering, do other people, do other researchers outside need to know this information in this particular manuscript? What's the impact of this manuscript on the subject? Is it really advancing the state of the art, or is just another piece of information that can be sitting there for ages, gathering dust without any impact? And more, we also think of the number of citations that manuscript is going to get in different search engines like Scopus, Web of Science, and so on. We also consider whether the manuscript is of enough quality so that the information in the manuscript can go to technical reports, guidelines, codes of practice, and so on. Yeah. So, for instance, in civil engineering, when we get a manuscript, we think, oh, can we actually include some of this information in the Eurocode? And that's clearly showing impact of the article, not only the short term, but also in the long term, because that has a potential of changing the way we design buildings in civil engineering. And more, we are also using, obviously, metrics, number of sites per article, downloads, and also in terms of originality. More and more, we're using software like Turnitin to check if the article is really original or not. Something else we also take into account is, again, thinking of the impact of this article. And here at the bottom of this slide, I have this quotation from one of the editors of an Elsevier journal. And this lady, Mary Bauer, she basically said that 27% of the articles published in this particular journal were not cited, meaning that almost a quarter of the articles were not cited within that time frame of 5 years she was talking about. In that sense, she thinks nothing would have been lost, except that the CVs of those submitting those articles would have been shorter. And that's why it's important to show impact when it comes to publishing in high quality journals. An article with good impact is going to be very highly cited, not only the short term, also in the long term. And as editors, as reviewers, that's something we are really looking for as soon as we get an article. I think it's also good to define how we define a good article. And for that, the only thing that came to my mind is the UK Research Excellence Framework, or what we call REF for short. And REF measures the impact of articles. This is an exercise we do in the UK every probably 6 or 7 years. It varies every time. But basically what happens is every single university in the UK forms a portfolio of the very best articles of every researcher and academic in a university. So, for instance, for the last, for this REF, actually, we get the results of REF in a couple of months, I think in late May or June. I had to submit my 3 best articles. So those 3 best articles, together with the articles from all the School of Engineering, they go to different panels, obviously depending on the subject. And those panels assign a certain mark to our articles. So if my research, for instance, is considered to be world leading in terms of originality, relevance, and scientific rigor by this committee, they give 4 stars to my article. If my article is of quality, but not to this top 4 stars, it's only quality that is internationally excellent, so it's 3 stars. Anything below that is just recognized at the international, national level, and 0 is that it has nothing of these other qualities. So as for us, as Warwick, as School of Engineering, our aim is to publish as many 4-star articles as possible, and sometimes 3 stars depending on the situation. I'll tell you more about this later. So how we see a 4-star article? It's basically an article or a manuscript that points to new paradigms. So it's agenda setting, so it changes the way we think or the way we consider a particular problem. it's leading research or research well ahead in the subject. There is great novelty, new ideas, new techniques, new results, and those results have major influence in an area of research. There are new concepts, or you investigate completely new issues. It generates big changes in policies or professional practice. As I mentioned before, in civil engineering, anything that can potentially change the way we design buildings, that's impact and that's good and can be classified as a four-star article. So these articles also influence processes, production methods, management techniques. At Warwick, and I think it's going to be the same in many universities, while ILEC included, we try to focus more on quality rather than quantity of articles. So probably producing fewer articles of more quality rather than lots of articles with little quality is the way forward. We try to aim for 3 stars and 4 stars according to REF. This is not only because we want to publish good quality articles, because it also has an financial implication. So for every single 4-star article we publish, the university gets £100,000. And for every single 3-star, the university gets £25,000. And to be honest, the University of Warwick discourages from publishing 2-star articles unless they are useful for other purposes, like practicing engineers or so on. Now, something we have to keep in mind is that your article doesn't have to be a Nobel Prize level to be 4 stars. They should demonstrate 3 things: originality, relevance, and impact. Good articles and good REF scores increases not only the visibility of the university, but also it gives a positive perception of the research quality in a university. In the committees that grade these articles between 0 to 4 stars, obviously there are many researchers, many academics. Academics with more experience tend to give higher scores compared to new members. And something else we have to keep in mind is that a 3-star article can actually become a 4-star if we know how to present the information and how to show the results. As I said before, essentially at Warwick, they ask us not to waste time in 2-star article unless they form the base for more research or they are important to increase the visibility of other articles. Something else that they mention is, excuse me, just give me 1 second. Something else they mentioned many times in the committees and in the meetings we have is that having a good article in a bad journal doesn't work well for the university. So good articles have to go to good journals. And then something it's worth emphasizing is both the abstract and introduction have to communicate clearly what I mentioned before, especially originality and the impact of the research. Those have to be there. In general, very long and wordy abstracts and introductions don't communicate well the originality and timeless of the study. And what you have to think here is, if you have a very long introduction with lots of references, you ask yourself, well, if there are lots of articles already, why do we need another article? Yeah, so try to keep introductions short. If you explain clearly the originality and impact of the abstract and introduction, obviously these are articles in good journals. If you know how to explain those two, originality and impact, the article may get good scores, even if the reviewer is not an expert in the field. So we are, again, at Warwick, they make a very strong emphasis on working in the abstract and introduction. And then again, when it comes to ref, the members tend to give high scores to good articles, even if the abstract and introduction are not so good. I have a few examples here on how good and bad abstracts look like. So this is an example of a good abstract when the originality is very clearly stated. Again, most of these examples are coming from engineering, so I'm afraid for those of you who are doing social sciences or other sciences, you have to put up with me, please. So in this case, in this abstract, there is a very strong statement to start with. An exact solution for this particular problem does not currently exist. That's a very strong way to actually start an abstract. And then the abstract goes on saying that they basically present a series of approximate solutions that can be used as a framework to verify other processes. But essentially starting your abstract in this way, saying that something doesn't exist, and you are proposing something to basically try to solve the same problem, that's a very good way to start a very high quality article. Because in that way, you immediately attract my attention as an editor and as a reviewer. This is an example of not a very good article, not really showing originality, and that's why I covered some of the information there in gray. The article basically goes on describing many things at the beginning. It's not clear what's happening. You can read it later on in your spare time. Basically, the only thing I want to highlight is that the main contribution of this article is this one here. There is a process, flow resistance. Again, this is fluid mechanics. And basically, they quantified it, and they said that the results they got are in agreement with previous experimental studies. And that's it. So there is no original contribution really from this article. But if you see it, they still managed to publish the article in a relatively good journal. This is basically what I already discussed. So this is something I mentioned. Oh, sorry. Am I going backwards? Sorry, something is going on. Where are we? Here. Yeah, so basically those were two examples of abstracts. But now let's move on. Let's see how to write high quality articles. I'm going to spend most of my time here actually. There is no secret. To me, this is the main issue we have to tackle. Preparation, preparation, preparation. Preparation is everything. Then we're going to see very quickly the structure, some technical aspects, and then at the end, why do we accept your article? First thing to do is to check if the idea is original. So you have to ask a series of questions. Is it new, original work? What's the scientific challenge